It was meant to be just another heated TV interview. Bright studio lights, cameras recording, and Alan Diarra, known for his confrontational style, prepared to provoke. Across from him sat President Ibrahim Traore, calm and alone in his simple military attire. No bodyguards, no advisors, just him. Alan leaned in, smirking. "Mr. Traoré," he began, voice sharp and direct, "how does a man with no political background lead a country facing terrorism and poverty?" The tension rose. Behind the scenes, producers exchanged uneasy looks. But Alan pushed further. "Some say you're just pretending to be a soldier in a world that demands real leadership. What do you say to that?" Silence fell across the room. An assistant dropped her clipboard. Someone murmured, "This is going too far." Yet President Traoré stayed composed. He met Alan's gaze steadily and replied, slow and measured, "Do you ask those who shed blood for their people to prove their worth? Or do you stand beside them and ask what you can contribute?" The studio went still. And that was only the beginning. Far away, in a modest living room, a 10-year-old boy named Karim sat, cross-legged on the floor. His oversized shirt hung loosely, and his grandmother coughed nearby. The TV flickered with poor signal, but Karim didn't look away. He didn't know politics. He barely recognized the man on screen, but something in that voice, steady and warm, held him. It felt familiar, like someone who understood what it meant to sleep on the ground. Back in the studio, Alan pushed again. "You speak of sacrifice, Mr. President, but will you admit your administration has failed in ways others predicted?" Karim's small hands clenched. He whispered, "Let him talk." And Ibrahim did, gently. "I didn't come here to claim perfection," he said. "I came to serve, especially when it's hard." Karim blinked. He'd never heard a leader speak that way. And suddenly, hope felt possible. In the control room, producer Lucy was anxious. She'd organized this segment for ratings, to catch the president off guard and create headlines. But what she got instead was something honest. Her hand hovered over the control board, trembling. Then her phone rang. A direct call. "Do not cut the feed," said a firm voice from the Prime Minister's office. "Let the people hear him. Let truth speak." Back on set, Alan tried one last time. "Tell us, Mr. President, why should we trust a man with no elite ties, no political legacy?" The camera zoomed in. Traoré remained steady. "Because I was once the boy selling mangoes to afford school. Because I still walk where others ride. And because leadership, to me, isn't power, it's responsibility. And I carry it for them." In the control room, Lucy wiped away a tear. She wasn't sure why she was emotional, but she knew this moment mattered. Behind the curtain, a young intern named Adama stood frozen. It was his first week. His only task was to refill water. Now, he couldn't move, captivated by what he was witnessing. No guards, no grand performance, just one man answering difficult questions with quiet resolve. Someone who had lived struggle, not just read about it. Backstage, Adama watched from the shadows. A few months ago, he might have rolled his eyes. His father, a soldier, had died fighting in the north. Since then, Adama had resented anything connected to the military. But something in the way President Ibrahim Traore spoke, not about power, but about carrying the weight of others, broke through that resentment. This wasn't a man seeking fame. He stood alone, on behalf of millions. Alan narrowed his eyes. "I see your medals," he said, voice tinged with skepticism. "But do medals feed our people?" Traoré didn't flinch. His response was quiet, but firm. "No, they don't. But the sacrifices made protect the ones who feed." Adama inhaled sharply. For the first time since his father's funeral, a smile crossed his face. "Papa would have followed this man," he murmured. Miles away, in a small living room on the outskirts of Bobo Dioulasso, 10-year-old Karim sat on the floor, tears silently streaming down his face. Not loud sobs, just the kind that come when something heavy breaks inside a young heart. His elderly grandmother, weak and resting, had dozed off beside him, but Karim stayed focused, eyes fixed on the screen. On the man who looked like a soldier, but spoke like a teacher. Then came another pointed question from the journalist. What makes you think you know what's best for this country? Traoré paused, then replied, Because I've slept outside in the rain. I've taught barefoot children. I've buried friends without caskets. I've known hunger and pain. And I've seen hope in the darkest places. Karim's chest tightened. He remembered being sent home from school because his fees weren't paid, crying in his grandmother's arms that night. Now this man, this president, was speaking for boys like him. Karim picked up his school notebook and began sketching Traoré's face. Beneath it, he wrote one word: hope. In the control booth, Lucy watched the live viewer numbers climb: 400,000, 530,000, 780,000. She had anticipated missteps, controversy, maybe a media blunder. Instead, she was witnessing something rare: humility, broadcast live. Alan, the journalist, was beginning to lose his composure. His tone grew sharper. Isn't it true, he demanded, that some say your leadership is just a military performance? Traoré remained composed. Some wear uniforms to dominate, others wear them to protect. I chose the latter. For the first time, the audience applauded. Alan hesitated. That wasn't supposed to happen. In the booth, Lucy's assistant leaned closer. Should we cut the feed? Lucy didn't respond. She couldn't. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Her father, a soldier, had once whispered goodbye from the front lines. His final call. She had buried that memory. But now, this man on the screen was bringing it back, not through emotion, but through truth. Clear, steady, undeniable truth. Then came the most difficult question. Do you ever feel guilty? Alan asked. Holding power while mothers bury their sons? Even the studio crew tensed. But Traoré didn't react defensively. He looked ahead, and his voice wavered slightly. The crowd suddenly went alive, waiting for more. He collapsed still, doubled over, bled, and every single night, he said, I write down their names, I visit their families, I walk their villages. Power doesn't shield me from grief. It makes me carry it. No applause. No movement. The silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, like the moment before a heartbeat returns. Alan looked down at his notes, unsure how to continue. Backstage, Adama wiped his face. His hands were damp. The young man who had once distrusted authority now saw it differently. For the first time, it felt like someone in charge truly cared. On stage, Traoré adjusted his jacket. I visited a camp in Kaya, he said. I met a little girl named Aminata. The atmosphere shifted. The room leaned in. She was 7. Her father was killed in a rebel attack. Her mother died from illness. She was completely alone. And still, she smiled. Another pointed question came. What does that have to do with policy? The journalist asked, skeptical. Traoré looked at him, not with anger, but quiet sadness. Everything, he said. She told me, if I can smile, maybe others will too. He paused. That little girl reminded me, leadership isn't about control. It's about healing. The room fell silent, the kind of silence that speaks volumes. In the audience, a woman named Keita began to weep. 3 years ago, she had lost her son to a roadside explosion and hadn't followed politics since. But today, for the first time in years, her tears weren't from grief. They were from relief. At last, someone was speaking with sincerity. Back in the control room, the phones wouldn't stop ringing. We're getting calls from Mali, Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana, shouted Lucy's assistant. Another producer chimed in. France just broadcast a clip. It's going global. Through all of this, Traoré remained composed. He hadn't raised his voice once. He didn't need to. The world was paying attention. Alan, now noticeably sweating, tried one last challenge. If you truly care about the people, shouldn't you step down and let a civilian lead? It was a clear trap, but Traoré didn't hesitate. He gave a small nod. Someday, yes, but not yet. The house is on fire and I'm holding the hose, he replied. Then he leaned forward slightly. When it's safe, I'll step aside. Not for praise, but to give the next leader a chance to build without fear of the flames. The cameraman whispered, powerful. Alan leaned back, clearly taken aback. Everyone in the studio felt it. This had moved beyond politics. It had become deeply personal. Across Burkina Faso, fathers held their sons a bit closer. Mothers reached for tissues. Children watched the screen, softly saying a word rarely used for those in power. Respect. Then, during a brief pause, someone handed Traoré a small folded paper. He opened it, read it silently, and then looked at the camera. May I share something? He asked. Alan, unsure, nodded. This is a letter, Traoré said, holding it gently. From Captain Sibe. He died yesterday in Djibo. He asked me to read it if he didn't make it back. The room went quiet. His voice, steady but filled with emotion, broke the silence. Mom, if I don't make it, please tell my son why I fought. Not for medals, not for power, but so he can play football without hearing gunfire. So he can walk to school wearing both shoes. So he can smile. Traoré folded the letter carefully and tucked it into his jacket. Captain Sibe was 31, he said quietly. His wife is watching this now, along with their 3-year-old son. The camera cut to Alan's face, pale, silent, and lost for words. In the control room, Lucy's hands trembled. This was no longer just a broadcast. It had become something much deeper, something real. And just when it seemed the moment couldn't become any more profound, Traoré spoke again. I'd like to invite someone, he said. Alan blinked. Excuse me? From behind the curtain, a young woman emerged. She wore simple clothes and walked with quiet determination. This, Traoré said, gesturing, is Fatima. She's a nurse. She stood quietly as the audience shifted in their seats. She's been working alone at a hospital in a conflict zone, in Farah and Gourma. Fatima gave a modest wave before stepping to the microphone. I've treated wounds without anesthesia, she said. I've held children who've lost everyone. I keep going because our people matter. Her voice wavered. Last week, rebels attacked our clinic. I hid 2 infants under a table with my own body. If the army hadn't arrived in time, if President Traoré hadn't intervened, those babies wouldn't be alive. Silence filled the room, a stillness born of shock, empathy, and respect. Outside the studio, hundreds had gathered, holding candles and peering in through the windows. This wasn't just an interview anymore. It had become something larger. The network had scheduled a break, but Traoré leaned into the mic and whispered, "Give me 1 more minute." The crew quickly adjusted. He looked straight into the camera. My father was a farmer. My mother taught me to read beneath a mango tree. We had no electricity, but we had love. He paused, his tone calm but steady. That's what shaped me, not positions or titles. I'm not perfect. But with every choice I make, I ask, would my mother be proud? Would the boy I once was in Djibo understand? No fanfare, no theatrics, just honesty, and a country listening. Then, silence. Not uncomfortable silence, but the kind that holds weight, that speaks volumes without words. Outside, a soft murmur became a song, the national anthem, first like a whisper, then unified and full. Inside, Fatma covered her mouth, tears threatening to fall. Across the city, in a modest tea shop, Adama stood up instinctively, eyes fixed on the screen. The cameras kept rolling, not from instruction, but because no one could look away. Within 48 hours, this had evolved into something beyond media. A moment of reflection, a mirror, a shift no one anticipated. And then, just as the room settled, President Traoré reached into his coat. "I received a message yesterday," he said, voice low, almost as if speaking to one person. "It's from a 12-year-old boy in the north. His name is Yakuba." He carefully unfolded a letter and read slowly. "Dear Mr. President, I want to be brave like you. My father died when bandits came. My mother cries at night. I don't want toys. I just want to feel safe. Please don't give up on us. Yakuba." Alan's jaw tightened. He said nothing. Traoré looked into the camera. "I hear you, Yakuba, and I won't give up." In a quiet village, far away, Yakuba sat with his mother beside a crackling radio. She wept silently. In the studio, no one moved. Across the country, families sat in stillness. This wasn't about politics anymore. It had become human. For the first time, people didn't just see a leader, they saw a father, a brother, someone who was listening. Finally, Alan spoke, his tone different, quieter, less certain. "Mr. President, isn't all this emotion just theater? Isn't it easier to read letters than to run a country?" A pause. No answer. Then Traoré stood, walked to the center of the room and sat on the floor. The air grew heavy. "I walked barefoot to school," he said. "I ate from one bowl with 10 cousins. My leadership doesn't come from manuals. It comes from lived pain." He pointed toward the camera. "If all you see is performance, then you've missed the point. This isn't about me. It's about our responsibility to those who've lost everything." Even Alan lowered his eyes. Traoré's voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm not performing. I'm remembering." That statement cut through the silence like a bolt of lightning, echoing not only in the studio, but across the entire nation. Veterans stood and saluted in their homes. Mothers pulled their children closer. Even Alan's producer, who had remained expressionless, quietly wiped away a tear. But the moment wasn't over. That evening, the streets of Ouagadougou glowed with candlelight. No one planned it. No one asked them to come. They just showed up. Children held hands. Elderly men raised worn flags. Women stood silently, clutching photos of sons, husbands, and brothers. The city didn't erupt in anger. It shimmered with hope. A soft chant rose through the crowd. "Nusima, Zuni." We are still standing. From the window of his modest home, President Traoré watched it unfold. He turned to his aide and whispered, "Not a word from me. Let the people speak." In a small hospital in Djibo, Fatima lit a candle beneath a photo of Captain Sidibe. In a distant village, Yakuba's mother held him tightly and kissed his forehead. And inside the TV studio, Alan sat alone, replaying the interview on a small monitor. He froze the video on Traoré's final line. "I'm not acting. I'm remembering." He stared at the screen. For the first time in his life, he recognized what real leadership looked like. But something unexpected was happening. The atmosphere outside the station had changed. Denser, charged with energy. The story had caught fire across the nation. The journalist, who once tried to trap Ibrahim Traore, had disappeared from public view. For 2 days, nothing. Alan Diarra, once known for his sharp questioning, was now a man confronting his own reflection. Inside his dark apartment, unshaven and visibly shaken, he watched the interview again. Line by line. Each question, each smirk, each attempt to corner the president now felt hollow. What struck him most wasn't how Traoré avoided conflict, but how he responded, with calm, clear conviction. Alan turned toward his window. 2 barefoot children walked by, laughing, carrying nothing but a stick and their dreams. And for the first time in years, he remembered who he once was. He used to be like them, just a kid with a dream to speak for those who had no voice. Somewhere along the way, that dream was lost. He had turned his platform into a weapon, not to defend, but to undermine. That night, alone, he collapsed to the floor and wept. Then he rose. He knew what he had to do, not just offer an apology, but take a step that would be remembered. The next morning, he requested airtime. At first, the station was hesitant, But one look at him and they understood. This wasn't for views. It was for something deeper. Alan walked back into the same studio. Same lights, same chair, same camera. But this time, no suit. Just a plain shirt and a face stripped of ego. When the red light blinked on, he looked directly into the lens. Not with pride, but with raw honesty. "I let you down," he began. "I tried to corner a man who has dedicated his life to protecting us. I used my voice to divide when I should have used it to bring us together." He paused, eyes filled with emotion. "But President Traoré showed me, and all of us, what true leadership means. He stood, not for himself, but for every child, mother, and soldier in Burkina Faso. That is the kind of leader I now respect." The country was still. Then came the applause. Then quiet tears. And then a door opened. Traoré entered, not scheduled, not announced, but welcomed. He approached Alan, gently placed a hand on his shoulder, and spoke just 6 words. This is how nations begin to heal. That evening, President Traoré didn't attend a formal dinner or political gathering. Instead, he walked through the streets of Ouagadougou, quietly, without ceremony. Alan walked beside him. No press, no security detail. On the outskirts of the city, in a small village, they stopped. A few children, barefoot, were playing with sticks and stones. One boy approached Traoré, eyes wide with curiosity. "Are you the man from TV?" he asked. Traoré smiled. "I am," he replied, "but more importantly, I'm here to serve you." The boy paused. "You serve people?" Traoré knelt beside him. Every true leader does. A bystander captured the moment. Traoré holding the boy's hand, walking him home. The video quickly spread across Africa. Not because it was staged, but because it was genuine. That week didn't end with fireworks or major announcements, just a quiet reflection of humility, healing, and unity. From that point forward, Burkina Faso didn't dwell on the conflict. They remembered the restoration, not the confrontation, but the response. Did this story resonate with you? Did it stir something in your heart? If so, don't scroll away. Leave a comment below. I believe in hope. Like this video to help share the message of genuine leadership and compassion. Subscribe for more stories that don't just inspire, they transform. Let's remind the world, sometimes the strongest voice speaks with calm, and the truest form of power is caring for your people.